discussions. And out of the presentations, the papers which have been presented, we have, the papers have elicited a lot of enthusiasm from the participants as well as the presenters. And out of that, questions have been asked and answers have been sought. And the conference came up with some common understanding in form of resolutions. And this will be our take home. You can go to the next page. Our take home. And what we have observed is that COVID-19 has been very disruptive. And over the last 3 years, that is from the year 2019, it has wreaked havoc across the world, disrupting businesses and social life. However, the conference observed that there has been concerted efforts by stakeholders across the world to come up with a solution to tame this pandemic. And therefore the conference resolved to commend the efforts to commend the sustained efforts by stakeholders out there to eliminate this pandemic once and for all. The second one is that when the pandemic struck, there was a lot of disruption in higher institutions of learning. As a result, learning was disrupted, institutions of learning were shut down, and the organizations or institutions which had the capacity to adapt quickly were able to roll out alternative learning forums or learning mediums. And the conference commends those institutions which were quick to respond and to reach out to low-lying fruits by rolling out learning through adoption of technology, such as e-learning and audio. And arising from that, the conference resolved to commend institutions like management universities and others in the world which were quick to adopt, and we encourage them to continue that way going into the future. Over the page, please. We also realize that out of that, there has been a lot of innovations, and innovations is not just innovation, but we concentrated on sustainable innovation that has got 3 elements, that is socio-economic and environmental. And for that to be sustainable, the conference recommended that there is need or resolved that there is a need for collaboration and partnerships across the world to ensure that innovation and good information for that matter continue to come into being for purposes of normalizing lives. And we also noted that collaboration and partnerships are key drivers of that process. Then there's also the element of the New World Order, where there is a lot of conflicts here and there. And we realized, the conference noted that initially we used to have some kind of a world policeman. And going by the hegemonic stability theory by Charles, it was noted that for the world order to remain or to be sustained, there has to be one stable, powerful authority, either economically or militarily. But in lack of that, we get into what we are currently experiencing. Nations rising against nations. And the conference explored the role of leadership and management in addressing that state of disorder. And it resolved that there is need to strategically manage resources across the world to check that kind of behavior. And also you do realize that, and also to address the challenge of scarcities of commodities and increase in prices in basic commodities. And the conference observed that management and leadership has a very great role in checking this kind of state of entropy. The next page. Also, we know, and we have read and heard across the world, that there is a disconnect between industry and academia. And the conference heard that there is a disconnect between industry and academia. And as such, academia is accused of not producing industry-specific or industry-responsive graduates. The conference therefore resolved that there is need for academia to constantly interact with industry so that it can roll out curriculums which are industry responsive. Then we have the question of enterprise risk management and leadership styles. And the conference was informed that there is a direct relationship between the two, that the management style informs how best risk management is handled in an organization. Therefore, the conference resolved that the two factors should work harmoniously for the benefit of managing risks in organization, especially in this pandemic era. The other one. We talked about global education. And global education comes in the understanding that institutions or universities are training for the world. In other words, institutions are training global citizens. And for that to be the case, and also that the skills of the 21st century are totally different from the skills of the 20th century. And the ICT component is core to such curriculums. Therefore, the conference resolved that there is need for universities to offer curriculums which are responsive to global needs so that graduates can work and live anywhere in the world. And such curriculums should encompass 4 building blocks, one of them being universal values, the other one being global understanding, excellence in all things, that is excellence in whatever you do, and finally, service to humanity. You realize that our university do have that particular value in community service. The competence-based or competency-based curriculum, CBC, has been praised as the game changer as far as resolving the question of unemployment among the youth is concerned. However, in the implementation of that curriculum in our country, stakeholders have been lamenting the fact that there was inadequate public participation. Arising from that, the conference resolved that there is need for the new government to put into place mechanisms, appropriate mechanisms that will encourage public participation in the implementation of the CBC going into the future. the next page. Ladies and gentlemen, conference participants, those are the resolutions that the conference has come up with. And these resolutions will be edited and published for wider circulation across the world. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Francis Majaria, for summarizing the conference resolution. I think, as I had mentioned, we are now at the tail end of our two-day conference. So just before I welcome our Vice Chancellor to close for us officially the conference, I want just to make a short remark of thankful, and I ought to say thank you to everyone who has participated in this particular conference. So what I noticed that we have now come to the end of the conference. Today actually marks the end of the 2 days of intense academic dialogue and exchange of ideas and experiences. It has been a conference like no other, indeed. The conference saw participation by both local and international participants, drawn mainly from Kenya, India, Japan, and USA. It has been a wonderful experience, and we have learned a lot as MUA community. The conference also witnessed today the launching of a book on neuro leadership, which is a testimony of the relevance of leadership in all disciplines. The papers were presented both in the plenary and also in the breakaway sessions. I wish to commend the paper presenters and those who sat through the presentations as audience and also as, of course, discussants. The conference is expected to publish proceedings and resolutions, which of course will be distributed widely to all the participants, policy makers, and conference participants. Selected papers will also be published in International Journal of Management and Leadership, which is a peer-reviewed journal of our university. Allow me to thank you all for joining us, and particularly our Japanese partners, without whom the virtual medium would not have been possible. I want also, of course, to recognize the participants also from the US who came physically to our university and did a wonderful presentation. Importantly also is, of course, our partner from India, who was with us for the last 2 days, and of course has just left now. Importantly, we have also signed the Memorandum of Understanding with his institute, and of course, we also launched a book with him today. So I'm very grateful to our partner also from India. There are, of course, very many other partners and participants who have done a lot to ensure the success of this particular conference. I may not be in a position to mention you by name, but as a university, we recognize your contribution, and we look forward to working with you in future for further success of our university, and also for further success of our partnership, and also to ensure all the research outputs are utilized for success of our respective economies globally. It is now my humble pleasure to welcome our Vice Chancellor, Professor Washington Okeyo, who has been with us since the beginning of the conference, and he has given us a lot of support to officially close for us this particular conference. Professor Washington Okeyo, most welcome.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cheloget, for welcoming me here, and good afternoon. I'm sure you must be feeling very exhausted after a grueling 2 days of the conference. And I want to say that I'm very, very delighted for us to have reached this particular moment of this conference. Normally, the success of an event is measured by too many things. There are many things, but there are two main things. The number of people who register to participate in that event, because you can plan an event, but if nobody takes interest to register, would that event take off? It will not take off. And that was demonstrated when we received the abstracts of how many were they? Over 50, going to 60 abstracts, which we received that were to be presented here. And indeed, I want to believe that most of them were presented during this particular conference. That is one measure of success. Then the other measure of success is who remains at the end of the day to participate in the closing ceremony. Then that speaks to how interesting the whole event was. And when I see all the faces that I can see here, it makes me feel very, very delighted. And I'm very sure that there are some who are still logged in through the social media. And so that is my excitement as I stand in front of you here today. Secondly, the objective of this conference, we know the theme was strengthening leadership and management in organizations in the post-COVID era. And that the objective was therefore to try and find solutions that hinge on leadership and management to see how those solutions can be used to solve the problems that plague the humanity and economic development, especially after the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I want to believe that listening through since yesterday, these objectives have all been achieved, and that we have now found those solutions that are going to enable us to manage the economic activities, manage our own social activities, manage education, manage everything that requires to be managed that was ravaged by COVID-19. And that, judging by the quality of the papers that were presented, along the themes, I think we had how many themes? Were they 8 or so themes, yes, that we had for this conference. Indeed, we had papers in all those themes, and that they are very, very high quality papers indeed. And they have made several findings and recommendations which have been disseminated through this particular conference in the last 2 days. And of course, like I said during the opening, the end result of a conference like this is publishing the output of the conference in a journal form. And we as a university have the International Journal of Management and Leadership Studies, where we publish the output from this conference to enable other academicians and other participants be able to access so that they can read and implement in their own way. Indeed, we look forward to partnering with the industry so that the solutions that we have come up with, we can be able to implement them so that they can also go a long way to help the humanity. Also, we look forward to partnering with the government so that the government can take up some of the issues, because all this cannot be implemented by the university alone. We need all those partners, and the government plays a very, very important role towards this. In the morning, I talked about the government's interest, particularly in the bottom end of the economy, using the bottom-up economic theory, which the current government is very interested in, and is going to allocate funds towards that. So some of these solutions will definitely be very, very instrumental and useful in the current government. We now look forward to the most important stage, and that is the implementation. And implementation will be in several ways, like I've just said. Now, we had a total attendance. This is another measure of success. Throughout the 2 days, yesterday we had over 280 participants who logged in. About 40 of those logged in through Zoom, and a number were through physical, and then over 200 logged in through the online platforms. And today, the 16th, we had about 35 who logged in through the Zoom system, over 200 logged in through online platforms, and over 30 were physical. So if you add up all that, it comes to about 550 total attendance. And that is a very, very great achievement indeed. So because we have biannual conferences, this has been a great success, and I'm aware that the planning of this conference started sometime last year. And so we are looking forward now to the next conference, which may take place next year, but certainly in the next 2 years, because we hold it once every 2 years. And therefore, the planning stage or the planning process of that particular next conference is going to start immediately, where immediately could be tomorrow. But before I finish, I want to appreciate, I know the DVC has appreciated the individuals who participated in this, but I also want to appreciate in my own way the people who made this conference a success. And I want to start by our keynote speakers. We had several keynote speakers of various caliber, various backgrounds and persuasions. I want to start by acknowledging our chair of the University Governing Council, Dr. Edward Udundo, who did the first keynote address. And the content of his keynote address had already been summarized in the morning. I don't want to go through it. I really want to appreciate him. And then there's Dr. Musova, who also is a University Governing Council member, also gave us a keynote address, followed by Dr. Mercy Karogo, also one of our council members, also gave us a keynote address. We also had Mrs. Estambale, who gave us a keynote address today on this important area of education, particularly from a global perspective. Thank you very much, Mrs. Estambale. And across, we also had Professor Richard Miller from Japan, who gave us a keynote address, and then Professor Jyoti Maya from India, who also gave us a keynote address. And we also entered into other ceremonies with Professor Jyoti. And also from the US, all the way from the United States of America, we had Dr. Edward Manyibe, who also gave us a keynote address. And of course, we had a guest, the former Vice Chancellor of JKUAT, Professor Atemo Micheka, also gave us some remarks. I cannot forget our paper presenters, because without the paper presenters, obviously, we would not have had a success in this particular event. So thank you very much, our paper presenters. And then the conference committee, Dr. Cheloget chaired the committee, our DVC. And we also had the core team led by Justa Nyaga, the Dean of School of Management and Leadership, We had Dr. Machoka, who is the acting director of research and innovation development. Gertrude Temgetich, thank you very much, and Dr. Angeline Wambugu, thank you very much for taking part in this and showing very great resourcefulness and organization. And indeed, I don't want to forget all the staff, because when an event like this happens in a university, everybody must contribute to it, and I'm very happy that a lot of staff, gave it their all to ensure that it is a success that it is today. And of course, our students. Yeah, I can see there are quite a number of our students who are still here, and I've been seeing them, sitting in throughout this conference. I really want to encourage them so that the next time we have this conference, we have more and more students, including even undergraduate students, because conferences are really panaceas for disseminating information, and it doesn't discriminate on the level that one is studying, all the way back down to diploma, because all of you do research and so on and so forth. I also want to mention that before this event, the last 2 days, we had our innovation and week, which we started on Monday. And it was extremely successful. We had quite a number of innovations which were displayed, were presented to us, and are likely to find themselves into the commercial world. So I want to encourage us to focus in that area so that we as a university can thrive in terms of making significant and practical contributions to the problems that plague our society and worldwide, so that we can make the world that we live in a better place to live in. So thank you very much. Everybody who participated, I cannot mention the names of each and every one, every single individual, but please feel that we appreciate you in whatever shape and form you contributed towards the success of this particular event. Now, with those few remarks, I wish to now call it off and declare this conference a success, but importantly, the end of the conference today. Thank you very much.